Hello. Welcome to my channel Touching Stories. You're about to hear an amazing story about love and unexpected decisions. Enjoy watching. Happy birthday, Savannah, exclaimed her mother, bringing a big, beautiful cake with 5 candles into the room. Well, daughter, make a wish and blow out the candles, said the father, hugging the birthday girl. The girl was confused with joy. She looked at the doll and did not move. Savannah ran up to her grandmother and, stretching out her arms to the much-desired gift, whispered, "Ruthie Finn, you're spoiling Savannah too much," the birthday girl's mother said in a disgruntled tone. She didn't think it was necessary to fulfill every whim of a child. But her husband's parents didn't share her view. Savannah was used to such conversations. She had heard them from a very young age, so she did not react in any way. Sitting at the table mentally, she was already in the yard with her new doll. "Why rush? We need to look at each other," he said, looking around. "I'm 21 years old now," when I explained to him. "I want a family, children. What's the point of stalling? We've already been dating for 2 years. After the wedding, the newlyweds went on vacation in Turkey. For a whole week they basked in the sun on the hot sand, breathed the sea air, and enjoyed the sound of the surf. Juana was happy, but that feeling quickly passed. After returning from the wedding trip, they plunged into everyday life. Peter worked from morning to evening. Juana studied at the last year of trade school. The newlyweds saw each other only at breakfast and in the evening when Peter came home from work. But Juana was even glad of it. After studying, she had time to meet with her girlfriends, gossip with them. She saw her ex-boyfriend a couple times. He was walking in the company of his new girlfriend and did not pay any attention to her. His indifference hurt Juana's ego, and she decided to herself, "I'm going to be happy. In spite of you, I will." "Yes, your mother-in-law is a holy woman," exclaimed friends. "One can only dream of such a woman." "Then dream on," Juana parried. "But for me, it's better to live separately." "But Peter seems to be happy with it," she concluded sadly. When Savannah was born, Juana, strangely enough, did not feel any particular joy. She thought she was ready for motherhood, but the newborn baby only annoyed her. "Peter doesn't help me at all," she said with resentment. "He comes home from work, plays with his daughter for half an hour, and goes to bed." "I don't know," claimed Juana with annoyance. "But it's his daughter too." On the eve of the first little anniversary, Juana and Peter and their daughter went to the store. The mother decided to please the girl with a new dress, but Savannah noticed a large doll on the highest shelf. While they were trying on dresses, she kept her eyes on her. And when the mother offered Savannah to choose one of the outfits, the girl asked for a doll instead of a dress, to which the woman, without hesitation, refused. After waiting for her daughter to go outside, Juana made a scandal. She was hurt that no one had consulted her. The gifts from her father and his parents pleased the birthday girl more than the new dress she had bought. Almost crying, she reproached her husband that he only spoiled his daughter, and she had to bring her up and raise her. Unable to bear her daughter-in-law's accusations, Ruthie stood up for him for the first time since her son's wedding. "Juana, you are wrong," tried to calm her mother-in-law. "You are still young, and you don't understand many things because of your inexperience. But everything will come with time. If only there was a will." "Are you saying I'm lazy? I don't want to do anything, and I don't do it." Peter was silent. Ruthie and Finn looked at their son sympathetically. After a short pause, the man said, "I wanted to surprise you on our wedding anniversary, but I guess I'll have to give up that idea. I've saved up enough money for a separate apartment. On the next weekend, we can look at the options and decide on the purchase of his apartment." "Let's hope so," his wife supported him. One day, on the eve of a holiday, Juana's colleagues planned a corporate party. In the morning, she warned her husband that she would be late and asked him to pick up her daughter from kindergarten. "Okay," Peter promised and left for work. In the evening, Juana's cell phone was ringing off the hook, ringing husband, mother-in-law, and unfamiliar numbers. She tried to ignore them for a long time, but when she answered the call, she was surprised to hear the voice of her teacher. Her husband was supposed to pick her up, Juana replied. I'll be there soon. Calling a cab, the woman dialed Peter's number all the way, but all she heard in response was a long dial tone. Out of anger over the ruined party, Juana ran into the daycare center at 7:45. Savannah was sitting on a bench near her locker, fiddling with a rag doll. The teacher was showing her displeasure. Juana, trouble. That was the first thing she heard on the phone. Tell me exactly what happened, she asked her sister-in-law in a frustrated tone. The accident. Swallowing her tears, explained her mother-in-law. Peter is in surgery. I called you, but you didn't answer. Juana left her daughter with a neighbor and went to the hospital. The doctor met her and told her that the victim had died on the operating table. Not immediately realizing the doctor's words, Juana looked at her husband's parents sitting on the couch. Ruthie was weeping, and Finn sat pale as a sheet, cradling his grief-stricken wife in his arms. The next week passed like a blur. Sad faces, words of condolence, some people, but suddenly it was all gone. The empty house and the emptiness of the soul. Only her daughter as a reminder of her old life. Savannah, already shy, became withdrawn. She moved silently around the apartment like a shadow. Sorrow and sadness settled in her little heart. Time passed. Juana gradually accepted her fate as a young widow. Unlike her, Savannah missed her father very much. She spent all her time with her favorite cat that her father had given her. The grandparents supported their granddaughter as best they could. They often took her and the cat to their house. Their love and kindness helped her cope with the loss of her father. When Savannah went to first grade, Juana brought a strange man into the house. The girl did not like her mother's new acquaintance. He was a short, stocky man with stubble on his cheeks and chin, and he was the opposite of Peter. The man held out his hand to the girl without a single muscle on his face. Savannah hid her little hand behind her back and said, My daddy is dead. Soon Uncle Jack moved with his belongings into Juana's apartment. His relationship with Savannah didn't go well from day one. The girl didn't like the fact that a strange man was running their house, and the shelves where her father's clothes had been were now full of his things. But no one was interested in her opinion. Her mother was completely infatuated with her new beau. She tried her best to please him, sometimes forgetting about her own daughter. Ruthie and Finn were very worried about their granddaughter. They could see that Savannah was not accepting of her mother's roommate. Whenever possible, the grandparents took their granddaughter with them. A few months later, Juana announced that she was pregnant. In view of this, she and Jack decided to get married. On the rights of Juana's husband, the man began to take an active part in the upbringing of her daughter. For every innocent misdemeanor, he scolded her and punished her. The mother never stood up for Savannah. She was always on the side of the new husband. In due time, a baby girl appeared in the family. They named her Lada. Now she took all of Juana and Jack's attention. They spent every spare minute with her. When the mother needed to do something around the house, she asked her eldest daughter to look after her sister. At such moments, Savannah looked with interest at the tiny hands and fingers of the newborn baby, talked to her and stroked her head, which had a light fuzz instead of hair. The girl felt no dislike or jealousy toward her sister. Savannah dreamed that when Fiona grew up, they would be best friends. For starters, we could exchange the apartment for a larger one with 2 or 3 rooms, Jack suggested. I can't sell this apartment without the consent of my mother-in-law and father-in-law. The woman replied, They have shares in it after their son's death, so you should talk to them. Convince them that we are cramped with 4 people in one room, the husband insisted. When Savannah noticed, the couple was silent. A few days later, when Juana brought her daughter to her grandparents, they talked again. After listening to her daughter-in-law, Her mother-in-law asked, "Joanna, are you sure there's room for Savannah in the new apartment?" "What do you mean?" clarified daughter-in-law. "If you and your husband decide to take out a mortgage," Finn said, "we can buy your share of the apartment from you. You'll have the money for the down payment, and we'll have the memory of our son." Juana was not particularly pleased with her father-in-law's offer. She expected to get the whole apartment. But seeing the intransigence of her first husband's parents, she agreed. Ruthie and Finn sold their favorite dacha, where many years of rest from the bustle of the city, their car and garage. The money was just enough to buy out Joanna's share. "And for Savannah?" surprised daughter-in-law asked, counting the money. "We'll give Savannah the apartment when she grows up," Ruthie promised. Jack was the most unhappy with the deal. "Let her stay in her own apartment," he said, referring to his stepdaughter. "You see, I'm supposed to feed and clothe her, and then she won't say thank you, and she'll fly off to her own apartment. I'll be working my ass off for the rest of my life, and she's already got her own place." "Jack, what could I do?" Juan justified herself to him. "Don't be upset. We'll earn our own." "Yes, we'll earn it," her husband sneered. "With our salaries, we will live in hunger now." "But you wanted a spacious apartment," Juana reminded him. "I didn't know the apartment wasn't yours," the husband admitted. "If I had, I wouldn't have gotten involved with you in the first place." "Jack, what are you talking about?" the woman said in a frightened tone. "You didn't get involved with me because of the apartment." "No, of course not," he reminded himself, stroking his little daughter's head as she ran up to him. He was very fond of Fiona. "I just don't think it's fair that one of your daughters already has an apartment and the other one is homeless." Fiona was growing up with her father, and Savannah had only real estate left from her father, Juana argued. The new apartment had 2 rooms. One was for Juana and Jack, and the other was a nursery. Savannah and Fiona were friendly. The older sister enjoyed taking care of the younger sister, and the younger sister paid the older sister, but the younger sister paid the older sister with her love, which Savannah lacked in her new family. Her stepfather still paid no attention to her, except when she needed to be scolded or punished for something. Her mother had always been cold to Savannah, and with the birth of her second daughter, she had grown cold to her. One day, when Savannah was in 6th grade, she came home from school earlier than usual. Her mother was at work, her sister was in kindergarten, and her stepfather had been home for days. He had been fired from his job and was looking for another one. That afternoon, Savannah noticed another woman's shoes in the hallway. When Jack saw his stepdaughter, he was furious. "What are you doing home at this hour?" he yelled. "You're supposed to be at school." I felt bad and I was released from the last lesson. The girl excused herself, looking at someone else's shoes. "Do we have company?" "No. It's a neighbor who came by. She was just leaving," answered the stepfather. "Go to your room." Waiting until Savannah was out the door, Jack saw her off and went to his stepdaughter's room. "How are you feeling?" he asked for the first time in all the years of living with Savannah's mother. "I'm fine," she replied, surprised by her stepfather's concern. "Savannah, don't tell your mother that the neighbor came by," Jack asked. "Otherwise she'll think of something." "Think what?" The girl didn't understand. "Nothing," said the stepfather. "Just don't tell her." Savannah didn't tell her mother about the neighbor's visit. But she noticed that Juana's relationship with her husband had become strained. They often fought, accusing each other of every mortal sin. Often the girls were caught in the middle. Savannah went more and more often to her grandparents, where she was still loved and pitied. One day, after another family scandal, she packed her things and left, telling her mother, "I don't want to put up with your husband anymore. I'm sick of the endless scolding. I'm going to a place where I'm always welcome and where I'm always expected." Joanna did not dissuade her daughter. At that moment, it was as if a stone had been lifted from her shoulders. For the next week, she never called her mother-in-law and asked her how her daughter was doing. Meanwhile, Savannah seriously took up her studies, which in recent years corrected all her bad grades. Teachers noted the changes in the girl. She became calm, more sociable, cheerful. Savannah did not remember about her mother. She only missed her little sister. By her senior year, Savannah had made up her mind at her choice of profession. "I will study psychology," she told her grandparents. "Our university has a psychology department." "Well, that's a good choice." Finn supported her. "Psychology is a serious science," Ruthie agreed. When she heard about her daughter's decision, Juana laughed. "What kind of profession is that?" "Being a shoulder to cry on for strangers," she said. "You don't have enough problems of your own to solve other people's problems." "Why are you doing this?" Her mother's reaction didn't surprise Savannah. She was used to Savannah ridiculing all her ideas and considering them delusional. "Maybe I can understand you," the daughter explained. "Why do you live with a man who doesn't respect or appreciate you? Why do you love him more than your own daughters? Aren't you ashamed to talk like that?" Juana was indignant. "Jack raised you. He replaced your father. He dotes on Fiona. And if we fight a lot, that's what everybody fights about. Mom, do you really believe what you're saying?" Savannah was surprised. "He's been, and still is, sitting on your neck all his life. He may love Fiona, but he has nothing to do with me. You're wrong if you think that this bum, Alfonso and womanizer, could replace my father. He's no match for my dad. My grandparents raised me, but you for some reason think otherwise. I'm not judging you. It's your choice. Everyone has what they deserve." As she listened to her eldest daughter's words, Juana silently gulped air with her mouth open, as if she couldn't get enough of it. Finally, when Savannah was silent, her mother gritted her teeth. "You ingrate." Savannah only smiled, remembering how she had left her mother's house a few years ago, and never once regretted it. "You are wrong, Mom," she answered calmly to Juana's accusation. "I am very grateful to my father, from whom I inherited wonderful genes. I am immensely grateful to my grandparents, who put their souls into me, taught me to forgive and appreciate the good things I have. I am grateful to you for giving me life and not preventing me from leaving home. I'm even grateful to Fiona, who loves me and respects me, unlike you. But I have nothing to be grateful to a stranger who came to our house years ago on a whim and did not lift a finger to earn my trust and favor." Juana answered her daughter, "Nothing." With a glare, she ran out of the apartment, slamming the door loudly. Savannah enrolled in college. She liked her chosen specialty. She devoted all her time to her studies. Savannah was well regarded by her teachers. She was predicted a great professional future. After graduating from the institute with a red diploma, Savannah, among the 5 best students, was sent for an internship in one of the centers of psychological help to people in difficult life situations. The girl was happy to get such a chance. Ruthie and Finn were proud of their granddaughter. They decided that it was high time to give her a worthy gift. "Savannah," her grandmother addressed her, "you know how much her grandfather and I love you, and we want you to be happy. We are proud of your accomplishments and hope that they will only increase from here on out. You are now an adult, fully capable of living on your own. We've decided," Ruthie paused to catch her breath. "We've decided to give you an apartment," her grandfather finished for her. Savannah couldn't believe her eyes when she found herself in the very apartment where she had been happy, where the walls still remembered her father. "I thought it had been sold a long time ago," she admitted. Her mom said that they had put the proceeds as a down payment on the apartment they still lived in. "Yeah, we had to buy one out," Finn admitted. "So that's why you sold the house, the car, and the garage," Savannah guessed. "And we don't regret it one bit," Ruthie said. "You're our only granddaughter. You're all we have left of Peter. So please accept our gift as a token of our undying love for you." "Thank you." Savannah thanked them through tears of happiness. "I love you too. You are my most dear people in this world." Soon Savannah moved into her own apartment. She could not visit her grandparents every day, but she called them regularly to check on their health. After an internship at the Center for Psychological Help to people in difficult life situations, Savannah was offered to stay there to work. The salary is small, but the experience will be great, the director said, holding out her employment contract. Savannah agreed without hesitation. She had gotten used to the team during the year. Besides, she liked helping people. She got inexplicable pleasure from the fact that someone, thanks to her, became a little happier. Fiona often visited her older sister. Savannah got news from her, though it was hardly news. Nothing had changed in her mother's household. Jack still wasn't working, but he said he was looking for a decent job, which was hard to believe. "I've seen my father with other women a few times," Fiona confessed one day. "I think he's cheating on Mom." "Fiona, don't think about it," her sister advised her. "Let the parents sort it out themselves. Getting involved in a couple's relationship is a thankless task." "You're probably right," Fiona agreed. "Can I stay at your place tonight?" "What about school?" "We don't have school tomorrow," she explained. "We're going on a field trip as a class." "Then you can stay," Savannah said happily. On nights like this, the sisters didn't go to bed for long. They ate dinner and talked for hours over a cup of tea. Fiona shared her secrets with her sister, asked for advice, told her about her plans for life. Savannah listened to her with pleasure. She liked that, despite their different fathers and age difference. They were very close. When Savannah turned 25, she didn't organize a feast with her friends. The birthday girl invited her grandmother, grandfather, Fiona, and mother. However, Joanna, citing ill health, did not come, congratulating her daughter on the phone. Fiona was sad and silent that evening, waving her hand in the air and turning the subject away. Ruthie and Finn congratulated their granddaughter and wished her to meet a decent man. "When you're married to a trustworthy man, then you can die with peace of mind," Finn said. "Grandfather, what are you talking about?" His granddaughter stopped him. "You'll still have great-grandchildren to nurse. God willing," Ruthie whispered quietly. But it did not happen what they had wished for. 6 months later, after a heart attack, Finn died. Ruthie had outlived her husband by a year. Before he died, however, she had made a will for her granddaughter. To Savannah's surprise, Juana came to her mother-in-law's funeral. She hadn't spoken to her first husband's parents or been to her father-in-law's funeral in all these years, but here she was. "Mom, thank you for being there." Her eldest daughter thanked her. "I couldn't leave you alone on such a day," the mother replied. "Nothing has changed here," she said, looking around the apartment, "except for the wallpaper. They haven't even changed the furniture." "Mom, what are you talking about?" Savannah couldn't believe her ears. "What do you mean?" "What?" her mother explained without embarrassment. "It's been so many years since we left this apartment, and it feels like yesterday. We could have at least changed the furniture." "I don't think this is the right moment to discuss this," the daughter remarked. "But I want to remind you that my grandparents raised me, fed me, clothed me. You forgot about me the moment I left home." "Don't exaggerate, daughter. I always remembered you. But I realized that you would be better off with them," the mother justified herself. After waiting for a while, Juana came to Savannah with a cake. What an unexpected visit. The daughter couldn't help pouring tea. "Don't be sarcastic," Juana asked her. "After all, I'm your mother. I'm worried about you." "It's strange to hear you say that after all these years," Savannah admitted. "But it feels good." Juana was suddenly silent, looking around. Finally, taking a sip of tea, she asked, "What do you plan to do with the apartment?" "Nothing. I'll renovate it and move in." "Why do you need a 2-room apartment all by yourself?" "It's not just an apartment," Savannah replied. "It's where I grew up and was happy. And besides, it's in the center of town, a 5-minute walk from my work." After a brief pause, her mother asked, "What about your studio apartment?" "It won't go to waste," Savannah assured her. "I'll rent it out." Clearly not satisfied with her older daughter's plans, Juana finished her tea and said goodbye. Eventually, Savannah renovated the one-bedroom apartment and moved out, renting the one bedroom to a co-worker. By Savannah's time, Fiona had graduated from high school and enrolled in college. Juana continued to visit her eldest daughter in order to persuade her to give the apartment to her sister. "I don't understand what Fiona has to do with this apartment," Savannah wondered. "Why should I give it to her?" "But you two get along so well. She's your little sister," Juana argued. "You can't be so selfish." "I inherited the apartment from my father. Fiona has her own father. Let him take care of his daughter." "Yes," agreed the daughter. "You had the right until you sold your share to your grandparents, and they disposed of their property as they saw fit, and I will not violate their will." "Legally, she was right," Juana replied. "She inherited both apartments, and I can't do anything about it." "What does law have to do with family?" the man insisted. "Why does she need 2 apartments by herself? She used to live in a one-room apartment, and she could go on living there. She'd give the 2-bedroom to her sister, especially since Fiona's getting married, and when the kids are born." "Where will we all be housed together?" "No, I can't have a strange man in my apartment." "What do you suggest?" "I've talked to Savannah many times, but she's stubborn. She says, 'Mine.' That's it." "If she won't do it nicely, then we'll try a trick," Jack said. "She's renting out a studio apartment anyway. What does she care who she rents to?" "Fiona should ask Fiona to be her tenant." "Why?" Juana didn't realize Savannah wouldn't take money from her own sister. Her conscience wouldn't allow it, Jack suggested. And even if she did, she'd be out of money in a couple months. Savannah wouldn't be able to kick Fiona out on the street. Juana thought about what her husband had said. "It doesn't seem right," she hesitated. When Fiona returned from the institute, her father called her for a talk. "Daughter, we've been discussing it with your mother, and we've decided that it's unfair for one sister to have everything and the other nothing." "I'm talking about Savannah's apartments," Jack explained. "But she inherited them from her father," she reminded him. "Maybe you don't, but I do," the father said irritably. "Selfishness must be rooted out." The father outlined his devious plan to his daughter. Fiona listened carefully and turned to her mother. Juana shrugged her shoulders uncertainly, but then answered, "But you have to live somewhere. Your Adam is a country boy. You can't live in a dormitory. It's expensive to rent an apartment, and it's inconvenient for everyone to live with us. That's why you decided to take Savannah's apartment." "I thought it was about our family enemy," Fiona retorted. "Mom, Savannah is your own daughter, just like me. She's suffered enough. I wouldn't want her to be an orphan with her mother alive. And now, to deprive her of financial compensation for her lack of love." She walked down the street and thought about what had happened. Fiona loved her sister and sometimes did not understand why her mother was so cold to her. What could so mess up a child to send her to live with her grandparents? Didn't she miss her eldest daughter for all these years? Doesn't Mom realize that she is pushing Savannah farther and farther away from her with her attitude? These and other questions arose in Fiona's mind one after another. She was walking wherever she was going, and when she stopped, she realized she had come to her sister's workplace. After standing in front of the entrance to the center for a few minutes, the girl stepped inside. She had been here a few times, but had never paid attention to the patients or clients of this facility. Today, as she walked up to the nurse's office, she was confronted by several women. They were all different in age, status, and appearance. But the one thing they had in common was the deep sadness, if nothing else, the detachment in each one's eyes. I guess they lack love, too, Fiona thought to herself. "Sis?" She heard Savannah's voice behind her, inviting her guest into the study. Savannah poured tea and sat down next to her sister. Of course, the older sister answered without hesitation. "Why do you ask?" "I've always been surprised by her so different attitude towards us," Fiona admitted. "It often seemed to me that you were not her own daughter. She always neglected you with attention, affection, care, love. Why so?" "I've been thinking about that too," Savannah admitted. Maybe Mummy resents Daddy for leaving her alone with a small child, she said. What nonsense. How can you take offense at a man for being dead? It's going to be different for you. You and Adam love each other, and when children are born, you will love them too. And Mom, Savannah was silent for a few seconds and continued, Mom is an unhappy woman. She needs to be understood and pitied. She was a young widow after her first marriage, and her second husband was a bum and an Alfonso. I'm sorry, more like she's afraid of being alone, Savannah suggested. Savannah got up from her chair and walked over to her sister. It was good to see you. Don't fill your pretty little head with bad thoughts. You're going to be fine. And I'll always be there for you, and if you need my help, I'll be there for you. Maybe I should have been more involved in her upbringing, and she wouldn't have grown up selfish, Savannah argued. Are you saying that your grandparents didn't treat you well? Your mother was surprised. Preparations for Fiona's wedding were in full swing. The date had already been set. Invitations sent out and rings purchased when Savannah had been asked to head the new branch of the Center for People in Difficult Situations. But that would mean traveling to another city. She hesitated. I'm not ready to give up everything right now. Is there anything to give up? The director asked. Is there something keeping you here? No, Savannah was embarrassed. It's just that my sister's wedding is coming up. Oh, good. You can go on vacation, she suggested. You'll gain experience, you'll get the branch up and running, and in a year or two you'll be back here, in my place. Savannah had no reason to say no. The colleague who rented her apartment had also moved to another city. Savannah, aware of her sister's housing problem, offered her and her husband a one-room apartment for a while, until they could find a place of their own. Fiona was happy and did not hide it. Only her stepfather was dissatisfied. No, it's nothing. Fiona said you're sick. She's a chatterbox, her mother said cheerfully. 2 sneezes and she's already told everyone. I didn't tell everyone, Mom, Savannah said reproachfully. He's been moonlighting here and there, Juana mused. In addition, she had a man in her life. She met John at the center. He worked as an MT, and one day, when he arrived on a call, he saw an elderly woman who had been beaten. She refused to be hospitalized, and she was afraid to stay at home. It's not the first time my husband has beaten me, but I have never seen him so angry, she confessed to the doctor. Call the police, he suggested it. No way. The woman was frightened. He'll kill me when he comes back. Why don't you leave him? The doctor asked. Where would I go? I have no one left. No relatives, no friends. That man has driven everyone away from home. John felt truly sorry for the old woman, and he suggested that she contact the Center for Assistance to People in Difficult Life Situations. Not immediately, but still the old woman agreed. John drove her himself and handed her over to Savannah. Subsequently, he visited the center several times and was interested in the well-being of his ward. The young people's working relationship quickly turned into sympathy, and a month after their first meeting, John introduced Savannah to his parents. Although John was not much older than Savannah, his parents were quite elderly, intelligent, courteous, and pleasant to be around. They reminded Savannah of her grandparents. From that day on, she became a frequent visitor to John's family. When are you leaving? John asked. Tomorrow morning, Savannah replied. Sadness flashed in the young man's eyes. I'll be waiting for you, he promised. I'll be there as soon as I'm done with the paperwork. The lovers could not part for a long time. The next day, Savannah reached home by lunchtime. When she closed the door behind her, she leaned against the wall and remembered with pleasure the happy moments when her grandparents were still alive. Her memories were interrupted by the phone ringing. I'm listening, she said into the receiver. Hi, sis. Fiona's voice sounded familiar. I'm already home, Savannah answered. After a short pause, Fiona continued. I didn't want to tell you, but you'll find out anyway. Mom's in the hospital. What's wrong with her? Let's not talk on the phone. I'm going to visit her this afternoon. Let's go together. Having settled the formalities of her transfer to her hometown to become the director of the help center, Savannah met with her sister. After much hesitation, Fiona confessed, "Dad beat up Mom. She has 2 broken ribs and a concussion, not to mention bruises and abrasions. This isn't the first time, is it?" "Am I reading that right?" Savannah guessed. "Yeah." She'd taken a few sick days to avoid showing up to work with bruises. But this is the first time she's been to the hospital. "Why didn't you tell me?" "My mom told me not to." "Did you file a police report?" Savannah asked. "What are you talking about?" "Mom doesn't even want to hear about it." A nurse stopped the girls at the checkpoint. "You can't go in together." "You go," Fiona suggested and handed her sister a robe. When she saw her eldest daughter, Juana couldn't help but cry. Savannah's heart squeezed with pity. Always cold, always dissatisfied, the stern woman now looked like a wounded bird. Savannah wanted to hug her, hold her close, pity her, and tell her everything would be all right. But she held back her impulse. Sitting down next to the bed, she asked, "How are you feeling?" "Already fine," answered the mother, wiping the tears on her face. "Don't you want to tell me what happened?" Juana silently turned away to the window. Tears flowed from her eyes again. She was ashamed to admit to her daughter what had happened. "Mom, I can help you," Savannah said. "If you want me to." Juana continued to swallow her tears in silence. "Did Jack do this?" "Why?" "He's been drinking lately," her mother finally spoke. "His drinking takes up most of my paycheck. If I don't give him money, he raises his hand to me. And this time, Jack came with his drinking buddies. I refused to set the table for them. Why do you put up with this? Why don't you leave him? Why don't you go to the police? Do you still love him?" "I'm afraid of him," Juana confessed. "He won't let me live." "First file a police report," Savannah advised. "No, what are you talking about?" Scared Mom. "You have no idea what he could do." "Did you forget where I work?" Savannah reminded her. "I hear stories like this every day. If you don't do anything, it's not going to do any good. Either you get rid of your tyrant and Alfonso, or I'll wash my hands of you." "All right," Joanna agreed. "I'll do as you say." Upon learning of the statement, Jack went to his wife to confess. He swore that it would never happen again, that he would get a job and stop drinking. On her daughter's advice, Joanna was adamant. Still ingratiating and weeping, Jack became furious after his wife refused to take his statement from the police. Losing control of himself, he began yelling and threatening to kick her out of the house. Security escorted him out of the hospital and, at Savannah's request, informed her of the incident. In the evening, she went to her stepfather's house. After listening to him swear and threaten her, Savannah pulled out her phone and turned on the tape recorder, where everything was clearly audible. "I'll pass this on," she warned. "If you carry out any of your threats, you're going down for a long time. I'll make sure of that." "Why did you come?" Jack asked, realizing that this time it would be noisy. "My mom's getting discharged soon," Savannah said. "She needs to rest. You have 3 days to vacate the apartment." "Yeah, right," my stepdad grinned. "You're a fool. I'm as much the boss here as your mother." "You're forgetting about Fiona and me," Savannah said. "You already have 2 apartments. Isn't that enough?" "It's none of your business," the girl retorted. "My apartment has nothing to do with you. Neither does this apartment. You haven't invested a dime in it. It doesn't matter. I know the law. It's jointly owned and will be divided equally. If you don't go to jail before you divide it," Savannah reminded me. "What do you want me to do?" Jack asked again. "I want to settle this peacefully. You get out of here, and Mom takes the police report." "But where am I going to go?" the stepfather asked, confused. "I hear you have a lot of friends," Savannah sneered. "Maybe they'll take you in." Thanks to Savannah and a lawyer from the help center, Juan was able to divorce Jack and get him out of the apartment. He resisted to the last, but his stepdaughter's threats to lock him up convinced his stepfather to give in. Gathering his belongings, he left. Back home, Juana could not get used to Savannah for a long time, that she is now a full-fledged mistress. In addition, she needed a lot of counseling from a psychologist to get away from the stress. Savannah supported her mother as best she could. She felt like they had bonded more during this time than they had in their entire lives. The mother rejoiced every time her daughters arrived. Soon Fiona told her she was expecting a child. What about school? Juana was worried. I'll take a sabbatical, she replied. Savannah hadn't had time to tell her family about John, although they called each other almost every day. John was looking forward to seeing his beloved, but due to staffing shortages at work, they wouldn't let him go. Savannah didn't have a chance to come either. I can't leave my mom like this, she explained. One day, Juana took her older daughter for a walk. They now often walked together and discussed the latest news. After talking about distracting topics, Juana said, Savannah, I thought long and hard and decided to give Fiona my apartment. She and Adam are going to have a baby soon, and they need a permanent place of their own. You have the right to dispose of your property as you see fit, her daughter replied. Savannah had no claim to her mother's apartment, but she was unhappy that Joanna hadn't mentioned it, even though she had a share in it. Yes, agreed the mother. Fiona would be pleased, but I wouldn't want to be a free appendage to this apartment. What do you mean? Savannah didn't understand. Young people should live apart, said Juana. You're going to let me stay at your studio apartment, right? Savannah was not surprised by her mother's question, but rather upset. She thought she had realized her mistakes and was trying to make it up to her. But barely recovered from the divorce, Juana had gone back to her old ways. Under other circumstances, Savannah might have yielded to her mother, but at that moment her resentment for her spoiled childhood, for her mother's lack of love and affection, stirred in her with renewed vigor. Not wanting to show weakness, Savannah turned away and said firmly, I'm sorry, but I have other plans for the apartment. What do you mean, other plans? Juana snapped. You're not going to leave your mother on the street, are you? If you remember, not long ago, I helped you not to stay on the street, Savannah replied, turning around and looking into her mother's eyes. Everything I could do, I did. If you decided to give your apartment to someone else, that's your right. What does that have to do with me? Well, first of all, it's not someone, it's your sister, Juana said. And secondly, I didn't ask you to interfere in my relationship with my husband. You got us divorced and kicked him out of the house. Savannah was shocked by her mother's words. All her ghostly hopes for their rapprochement and warming of their relationship were destroyed in an instant. She wanted to scream and cry, but Savannah, clenching her will into a fist, calmly said, I thought you were glad to be rid of that drunkard and tyrant. You thought so, the mother parried. Before you came, I had a husband who loved me, and that's why he beat me, Savannah added. Yes, we had our disagreements. Like in any family, Juana continued, ignoring her daughter's words. But how would you know that? You don't have a family. Her mother's last phrase hurt Savannah. Like a hurt little child, she wanted to respond to her abuser. Thanks to you, I didn't have a normal family, Savannah shouted, barely holding back the tears that were choking her. My family was my grandparents. They showed me a different model of family relationships. Without humiliation, without scandals and abuse, where people love, respect, and appreciate each other. The daughter's speech cooled the mother's ardor a little, awkwardly trying to justify herself. Juana mumbled something inaudible, but Savannah wasn't listening. While I thought I was saving you from a tyrant husband, you were making plans for my inheritance, she suggested. And so that there will be no more innuendo between us, I inform you. I have a fiancé. His name is John. He's a doctor and a good man. We're planning to get married in the near future. John has found a good job in the capital. I talked to my superiors and they promised me to think about transferring me to the new branch of the Center for Helping in the capital. If everything works out well and we move to the capital, we decided to sell our apartments and buy one in the capital. I hope I've answered your question thoroughly enough. It was obvious that Juana was confused, having been rebuffed by her daughter. She looked at her silently and flapped her eyelashes. What about us? The mother could only say. You have your own life. I have mine. Savannah answered and turned around and walked in the other direction. Savannah, is it true? Are you trying to kick us out of your apartment? Her little sister chirped into the phone. Who told you that? Savannah asked, not knowing what she was talking about. Mom, Fiona answered. She said you're selling the apartments and moving to the capital. Is that true? Maybe, Savannah admitted, starting to come out of her sleep. When were you going to tell me? Fiona shouted suddenly. You know where I am, don't you? I'm not supposed to worry. And you didn't even bother to tell me that Adam and I were going to be on the street soon. Don't be so dramatic, sis. Savannah tried to calm her down. Sis. Fiona asked her again. A sister would never do that. You know we have no place to live. And yet you're going to sell the apartment you invited us to. Savannah finally woke up to this kind of attack from her relative. She didn't like the tone in which Fiona had spoken to her. Was that in lieu of a thank you? She asked. I'd like to remind you that my offer was temporary. You and Adam were going to take out a mortgage, Savannah reminded her. I just wanted to help you save money on rent. What money are you talking about? Fiona was nervous. We're barely making ends meet. Adam studies and works, but his paycheck doesn't even pay for entertainment. Not to mention any major purchases. Why don't you ask your mom? Savannah suggested it. I'm sure she'd be willing to make you feel welcome. You bet she would, Fiona replied hotly. Mom is not you. She wouldn't spare anything for me. She'd give me her own apartment if you hadn't ruined it. I'm embarrassed to ask what's my fault, Savannah sneered. It's that you're selfish. Fiona was not stingy in her accusations. You're used to having everything done for you. You want to go to school. Be my guest. You want an apartment. Get an apartment. Get an apartment. It's not enough to have one apartment. Get another one. You never cared about anyone else. Savannah listened to her sister and wondered, does she really mean it? How could she pretend to be loving and understanding for so many years? The thoughts swirled around in her head. Savannah didn't notice when tears ran down her cheeks. Everything she had believed in, everything she had strived for, was crumbling before her eyes. The people closest to her had betrayed her once again. Savannah had no desire to prove or explain anything. She took a deep breath, wiped away her tears, and said in as calm a tone as she could manage, I'm sorry, sister, for not living up to your expectations. But mine will stay with me, and I have no claim on yours. With that, Savannah dropped the call. The clock was approaching 6:00. The city was still asleep. There was a ringing silence. Savannah mentally fell into an endless abyss. A pall of light came over her eyes. She wanted to scream, but she had no strength. Tears were streaming down her face, and her heart was beating so hard as if it wanted to jump out of her chest. Savannah was pulled out of her daze by a phone call. The name John popped up on the screen. Shaking her head to bring herself to her senses, Savannah answered the call. Good morning, my love. The young man said hello cheerfully. I hope I didn't wake you up. I have some good news. Good morning, John. Trying not to show her depressed state, Savannah answered, I'm awake now. Did something happen to you? The young man suspected. Were you crying? No, I'm fine, she lied. Just a little cold. What bad timing, John complained. I finally settled the matter of the transfer. I start my new assignment in a week. I wanted to see you. Come. I'd be glad to. Then I'll pack all my things so I don't have to go back and come to you, said John. And you don't get discouraged. Drink tea with raspberries. I'll be as good as new when you get here, Savannah promised. 2 days later, she met John at the train station. The man was glowing with joy. Dropping the suitcase, he ran up to Savannah and took her in his arms and began to twirl her around. "Finally, we are together," he rejoiced. Every day, John brought his beloved breakfast in bed and met her with a hot dinner from work. While Savannah was away from home, he fixed the faucets that had been leaking for a long time, changed the hinges in the kitchen cabinets, hung up her portrait with her grandparents, which had stood on the table leaning against the wall for several years. In short, he did all the manly thing. In John's presence, Savannah felt happy and loved. The week flew by unnoticed. On the eve of John's departure, Savannah took a day off. In the morning, the lovers lounged in bed for a long time. And then, while the young man went to the train station to get tickets, the hostess prepared a delicious dinner. Having fortified themselves, they decided to walk around the city. Holding hands like school children, John and Savannah walked slowly through the park, enjoying the fresh, frosty air. They were warm and cozy with each other. The time flew by. For dinner, John invited Savannah to a restaurant. A glass of wine, light appetizers, romantic entourage, and quiet, peaceful music all helped Savannah to make this evening unforgettable. John took Savannah's hand and looked intently into her eyes. "Will you marry me?" Suddenly he asked, and taking advantage of her confusion, pulled a ring out of his pocket. At that moment, Savannah's heart was ready to jump out of her chest. She had been waiting for a marriage proposal from John for a long time and was ready to say yes, but she could not imagine that this moment would be so exciting for her. "Gladly," Savannah replied, and extended her hand to the young man. John left for the capital, and Savannah stayed in her city to wait for the transfer to another branch. After seeing her fiancé off, she plunged into her work. While dealing with other people's problems, Savannah forgot about her own. Having firmly decided not to dig into the past and to leave her relationship with her mother and sister as it was, she calmed down and began to focus on her own life. Having accepted the marriage proposal, Savannah asked John to do without lavish celebration. The bride and groom agreed to get married in one of the capital's registries after the issue of Savannah's move was resolved. By Savannah's time, John promised to settle the issue of renting a place to live. Spring was in full swing. The snow had long since melted, leaving no trace behind. Nature was coming out of its winter hibernation. The riot of colors around created a joyful mood. The birds singing in different voices made my heart flutter. Savannah was waiting for her transfer to the capital, and she was eager to see her beloved. John, as promised, prepared everything for the bride's arrival. Rented an apartment for the first time, set up everyday life, studied the real estate market. The long-awaited day had arrived. Savannah gathered all the necessary things for the first time, agreed with a realtor about the sale of their apartments, and went to the new life. All the way there, she thought about the last conversation with her mother and sister. "You are a bad daughter," her mother accused her. "Ungrateful. I gave you life as best I could, took care of you. Yes, you went to live with your grandparents, but that was your decision. I didn't kick you out. It's not my fault you couldn't get along with Jack. I didn't have to be alone for the rest of my life because of you, did I? I was too young when I was widowed. I needed a man, and you know, not everyone would take in a child. But Jack did, and he took you in, and you, kicked him out of the house. You were always trying to get me to be alone. You're selfish. I don't think anyone needs him but you," Savannah said. "Whistle and he'll come running. You have no right to insult my father." Fiona stood up for him. "I have always loved you and respected you as a big sister. You've been my role model in everything. But I didn't expect an apartment to come between us. And I didn't expect the price of your sisterly love to be an apartment," Savannah retorted. "You're ungrateful." Fiona repeated her mother's accusation. For you, material things were more important than family ties. That's not true, Savannah replied. I haven't stopped loving you. But you, when you learned that there would be no division of my inheritance, quickly abandoned me. Juana and Fiona spent a long time proving Savannah wrong, trying to press her pity and conscience. But their arguments didn't work on Savannah. After giving them a chance to talk, she left with the words, I will not be manipulated. But I think the grandparents envisioned this situation, so they disposed of their property this way instead of the other way around. If you can't be happy for me with me, I won't bother your eyes and will leave. I don't want anything from you, but I don't owe you anything either. You have a husband, she turned to her sister, so earn your own apartment. And if you can't, ask your father for help. At the new place, Savannah quickly settled in. The team was new, young, active. There was a lot of work, but Savannah always got home on time. She gave herself the attitude that family was the most important thing in her life. On the appointed date, the first day of summer, John and Savannah married. As agreed, they didn't invite guests to their first family party, deciding it was for the two of them. They still hadn't heard from Jana and Fiona, but the realtor found buyers for Savannah's apartments. To solve the issue of the sale, she took 2 weeks of leave without pay and went to her hometown. Having settled all the formalities, Savannah was about to return, but before leaving, she decided to visit her relatives. As she approached her mother's house, she saw her sitting on a bench in the yard. It had only been 6 months since they had last seen each other, but it seemed to Savannah that she had aged a lot in that time. Juana was sitting alone, staring intently at a single point in front of her. Sadness and longing were imprinted on her face. The wrinkles that were barely noticeable before had become deep. At the sight of her mother, Savannah's insides tightened. At that moment, she wanted to hug her and feel sorry for her, maybe even apologize for what she had said in haste. On impulse, Savannah rushed to her mother's side, but Jack came out of the driveway. When she saw him, Juana got up quickly and scampered after him. Savannah stopped. As she looked at her mother and stepfather, she experienced a gamut of feelings. Pain from another betrayal, anger, self-pity. Barely holding back tears, Savannah turned and ran back. That's when she heard a familiar voice calling her name. Savannah? Is that you? The girl stopped and turned her head to see her sister with a bag in her hands. Despite her haggard appearance, she looked better. Pregnancy looked good on her, waddling from foot to foot like a duck. Fiona approached Savannah. How long have you been here? She asked, as if nothing had happened. 2 weeks ago, Savannah answered. For how long? I'm leaving today. I came to take care of some business. And here. Fiona paused, trying to formulate a question. I wanted to stop by before I left to say goodbye, Savannah explained. But no one was home, she lied. You must have missed your mom, Fiona suggested. She was silent again, obviously not saying the right thing. Leave. Is everything okay? Savannah asked. Yeah, I'm fine. Then I'm gonna go, Savannah said. Would you like to come over for a visit? Fiona asked in an uncertain tone. Not tonight. Some other time, Savannah promised, and was about to continue on her way. But her sister called out to her again. Savannah turned around and saw Fiona's guilty face. Savannah, she addressed her sister as she had before. I'm sorry for what I said to you the other day. You know hormones. Don't hold it against me. I don't know what came over me. You're right. I had nothing to do with your inheritance. You're the only heir to your dad and his parents. I wasn't so lucky with my father. He never thought about me. Don't worry. Savannah calmed her down. I'm not mad at you. I get it. Everyone can make mistakes. The main thing is to realize it in time and repent. Savannah walked over to Fiona and hugged her. As she pressed against her sister, she felt a jolt to her stomach and bounced away. Fiona smiled and placed a hand on her tummy and said, "Well, there goes the niece you've met." The girls laughed. After the conversation with her sister, Savannah felt as if a mountain had fallen from her shoulders. Only one thought kept her mind. Did Mom really get back together with Jack? Has she forgiven him? Savannah didn't dare to ask Fiona about it. She was afraid to break the fragile peace that had formed between them the last time they'd met. "Why do you need this information?" John asked incomprehensively. "If your mom is fine with it, then you shouldn't care. Whatever she is, she's my mother, and I can't live with that monster around her," Savannah justified. "What if he hits her again? But you can't stop your mother from hanging out with him. It's her choice." "You're right," Savannah agreed, sighing heavily. "And then there's your sister." "I don't think she'll let her mother get hurt," John said before leaving. Turning the key in the lock, the man kissed his wife on the cheek and disappeared out the door. Savannah thought about it for a while longer, but gradually the daily routine distracted her from the bad thoughts. She plunged headlong into her work. On weekends, the newlyweds traveled from morning to night to view apartments. They decided not to hurry with the choice, especially since John's apartment was not sold. There was nothing suitable for our money on the secondary market, Savannah said disappointedly, coming back from another viewing. "Why don't we look at new buildings?" John suggested it. "The price is lower." "Yes, but we don't know when the house will be finished. And then there's the renovation." "You need a lot of money for that too," Savannah replied. "It's better to renovate than to redecorate," John said with optimism in his voice. The next weekend, we decided to look at apartments in houses under construction. After waiting for the end of the work week, the couple were going to the construction company when Savannah's phone rang. "Hi, sis," she said cheerfully, answering the phone. "Savannah, it's not Fiona," he said. "It's Adam. Did something happen to her?" Savannah was worried. "No, don't worry." Her sister's husband reassured her. "I'm calling to tell you that you're an aunt. We had a baby girl. Fiona's asleep, so I thought I'd call you." "Congratulations," Savannah shouted with joy. "Why don't you come visit us?" Adam asked. "I can't yet. I'm swamped at work," Savannah explained. "But I'll try to be here by New Year's Eve, just in time for my niece to grow up and get stronger by Savannah's time." Saying goodbye to her sister's husband, Savannah told John the happy news, but noticed that he reacted too calmly, even indifferently. "I understand that they are strangers to you, but you could at least be happy for me," Savannah said with resentment in her voice. "I'm glad," John replied. "It's just that I think it's time you introduced me to your family. It's not human. We've been married for 3 months, and your mother and sister still don't know." "You're right. But you know how complicated my relationship with my relatives is." Savannah tried to justify herself. "I promised to make it up to them. We'll go to visit them together in the winter." After looking at several apartments in new buildings, the newlyweds chose the one they liked the most. The neighborhood is new. All the necessary infrastructure will be. The yards are arranged for children and adults to relax. Savannah listed the pluses of this object. Even the metro station is planned to open in walking distance. "And a large selection of apartments with different layouts on different floors," added John. "And from the window you can see a small pond. I like everything." "Yes, but if my apartment were sold, we could buy a 2-bedroom in this house," John said, frustrated. "The important thing is to start somewhere," Savannah encouraged him. "I have enough money for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's better than renting." "I agree," John replied in the same frustrated tone. "But don't get me wrong. I've never lived off a woman. And now I don't want you to think that I need your apartment." "What are you talking about?" Savannah was indignant. "You and I are husband and wife." "It's not silly," John continued. "It's very important to me." "What are you saying? If you happen to be the one buying this apartment, then let it be registered in your name." What's more, I'm proposing a prenup. Savannah looked at her husband, trying to understand whether he was serious or joking. But there was not a muscle on John's face. He was determined. Okay, Savannah agreed. If you insist. Yes, I want my woman to have confidence in me at all times. You are my knight, Savannah said with a smile and hugged her husband. Congratulations, Savannah, said a representative man in a suit and tie, handing the new keys to the next tenant. You are now the full owner of a one-bedroom apartment with finishes. Thank you, Savannah replied, and without hiding her joy, looked at the people standing on the playground, future neighbors. The keys were ceremonially handed over to all the apartment owners present. Then on the same playground, the developer organized a small amateur concert. In the evening, Savannah and John returned home happy and discussed their move to the new apartment. During the conversation, they did not immediately hear the phone ringing from John's jacket pocket, but the caller was persistent. Looking at the screen and seeing an unfamiliar number, John was surprised and answered the call. Hello. Yeah, it's me. I'm selling. I'll be able to drive up next weekend. Okay, all right. When the call was dropped, Dawn grumbled unhappily. It's about time. Did you find a buyer for the apartment? Savannah guessed. I think so, John replied. What am I supposed to do with him now? We could have bought a bigger apartment a month earlier. And now, not to sell the new apartment. Maybe we shouldn't sell your apartment yet, Savannah suggested. Let it sit, and then we'll spend 6 months looking for a buyer again. No. As long as there's someone who wants it, we have to go through with it. Savannah replied with a shrug. The next weekend, John went to his town, and Savannah, not knowing what to do, walked from corner to corner. Suddenly, the phone rang. Hi, sis, said Savannah, answering the phone. Hi, Savannah, Fiona said without much joy in her voice. What's up? What are you doing? I'm thinking about moving to a new apartment, Savannah answered, and then asked, Why are you so sad? Did something happen? I don't even know where to start, the sister hesitated. Mom and Dad. Well, they're back together. I don't want him to come home. We're too cramped. Dad got a house in the country from his parents, but Mom doesn't want to leave town. Why don't you talk to her? No way. Don't involve me in your business. I've already given up my share of the apartment. We'll take it from here. Savannah, are you sure you won't claim it? Fiona asked. I won't, she promised. Thank you, sis, Fiona exclaimed happily. You're the best. After settling all the issues in his hometown, John returned home, satisfied. Savannah, he exclaimed from the doorstep. I propose to buy a plot of land in the suburbs and gradually build a cottage. What do you think about it? I think it's a good idea. Surprisingly, such a plot of land was found very quickly. On New Year's Eve, the happy newlyweds were on their way to visit Fiona and Adam. The hospitable hosts were happily unwrapping the gifts brought by their sister and her husband. Savannah was getting to know her niece, and Fiona was jokingly indignant. What a sister! She got married and didn't even tell anyone? When the first passion subsided, Savannah asked, Where's Mom? She moved in with her father, Fiona replied dryly. The older sister didn't pursue the subject. The New Year's Eve party turned out to be fun. Adam and John, despite the age difference, had quickly found common ground. On the eve of homecoming, Savannah asked her sister, Have you seen your mom lately? Not since she moved away, Fiona replied and added, If she hasn't called, then she's doing well. Savannah was a little surprised by her sister's answer, but she remained silent. The day the guests left, Fiona received a call from her mother. Daughter, can I come and see you? She asked, swallowing her tears. What happened? Father, I guess I was wrong to contact him again. Of course you can come, Fiona said in a disgruntled tone. But your former room is now our bedroom. Thank you, Fiona, said the mother, ignoring the warning. A minute later, the doorbell rang. On the threshold stood the mother. When she saw her eldest daughter, she fidgeted and said hello, fixing with her hand her hair, which was dislodged from under the cap. thus covering her eye. Savannah noticed a bruise on her mother's face that was carefully covered with foundation. "Happy holidays, Mom," Savannah said, hesitating to go up to her and give her a hug. "I'd like you to meet my mom. This is my husband, John. And this is my mom, Juana." The woman introduced herself and extended her hand to her son-in-law. "I didn't expect you to marry such a handsome man." She turned to her daughter. "Well, why not? You have a beautiful daughter. She's smart, she's beautiful." "Yes, she got that from me," Juana said coquettishly. "Why are we standing on the doorstep? Why don't we sit down and celebrate?" "We should get back," Savannah said. "It was nice to see you." "Come visit," Fiona said. "You too," John said. "We will," Fiona promised. Savannah's heart was raw after seeing her mother. She was silent the whole way. Understanding his wife's mood, John did not bother her. Later, from a phone conversation with her sister, Savannah learned that, having contacted with her father, Joanna was addicted to alcohol, and when they get drunk, they start to find out the relationship, complained Fiona. Swearing turns into fights. "That's why I didn't want Dad to move back in with us." "Why didn't you tell me this before?" Savannah asked. "What difference would it have made? You already helped Mom out once. Where's the gratitude?" "She blames you even more for ruining her family." Savannah was hurt to hear those words, but she was used to her mother's attitude. "I persuaded her to stay, but she decided to go back to her father," Fiona continued. "And when I forbade him to cross the threshold of our house, she, in solidarity with him, signed over the apartment to me and slammed the door loudly. As you can see, their relationship lasted a little over a month." "Is she staying with you now?" Savannah asked. "No. A week after you left, her father came to get her and persuaded her to move back in with him." "I don't understand her," Savannah said with genuine regret. "Why would she be so nervous in her old age? Maybe she needs medical attention." "I don't think so. I don't think she'd want to go to therapy. It's been 5 years." The sisters still called each other, occasionally visiting. John and Savannah gradually built a house, a bathhouse, and a gazebo on their country estate. "Our country house is not for work, but for relaxation," Savannah said. And indeed, on every holiday and just on weekends, they often went out of town, inviting friends to visit. One day, after a phone conversation with his mother, John asked his wife, "Savannah, would you mind if I move my parents to our country house? They're in poor health. They'll be closer to us." Savannah had a great relationship with her mother-in-law and father-in-law, so she immediately agreed to her husband's proposal. On the next weekend, the couple went to John's parents and offered them to move into their house. "But what about our apartment?" hesitated Mother. "And what will happen to her?" John asked. "Let it stand. She does not ask for bread." After a little thought, the parents agreed. Soon they were living at their son and daughter-in-law's cottage, and were happy that now they could spend more time in the fresh air. Savannah was pleased to see the old people happy. She liked to keep secrets with her mother-in-law, just as she had done with her grandmother when she was a child. John's mother was an intelligent woman and tried to stay out of their lives. But there was one question she couldn't stop asking. "Savannah, why haven't you and John had children yet?" She asked her one day. "I would love to have grandchildren in my old age." It was a depressing question. For many years, she and her husband had dreamed of children, had been examined by various doctors, had taken medications prescribed by them, but all in vain. They all said the same thing. "You're both healthy. Maybe there's an incompatibility between you." And no one could tell me what to do about the incompatibility. Savannah had given up hope of becoming a mother. Once in a conversation with her husband, she even suggested that he break up with her and find another woman who could give birth to an heir. But John was outraged when he heard about it. "Never. Do you hear me? Don't ever suggest that I break up with you. I love you, and I wouldn't trade you for any other woman. If God doesn't give us children, then we'll live together and enjoy each other's company. Savannah and John never returned to the subject again. They seemed resigned to their fate. But when Savannah heard the question of children from others, she felt uneasy. Fiona and Adam had another daughter. They were happily married, but Fiona had little contact with her mother. Juana, after burying Jack, who was stabbed to death by a neighbor in a drunken brawl, stayed to live in his house. She'd asked to stay with his youngest daughter, but Fiona didn't want to take in a mother. I don't think she'd be a good example for her granddaughters. She explained her decision. I don't want any drunkenness here. Savannah and her husband visited Juana several times, offering to help fix up the house, which was almost falling apart. But her mother wouldn't accept any help from her eldest daughter. She abandoned us years ago. She's gone to her capital city with all her money. Go there, she shouted at her. I don't want anything more from you. When I asked you, you didn't want to share. Now get out of here. Forget you have a mother. You're ungrateful. I raised you alone, without a father, and you ruined my family. You ruined my family. You kicked out my husband. You abandoned Fiona. I didn't abandon anyone. Savannah tried to justify herself to her mother. You're the one who threw me out of your life like an unwanted kitten. After my grandparents died, I was just floundering on my own. Well, keep on floundering. Don't mess with me. I've got someone to take care of me. Fiona always loved me unlike you. That's why you're living here in this shack, Savannah said with resentment. It's none of your business. I can live wherever I want. Get out of my house, shouted Juana after her fleeing daughter. Having witnessed the last scandal, John forbade Savannah to visit her mother. And Savannah herself had lost her last desire to visit her. 6 months after moving to the country house of his son, died John's father. The mother was very worried, but tried to hold on. After consulting, the couple moved her to their apartment. Cramped, but no offense, said John. Don't be so pompous, his wife said. We have a one-room apartment, but it's big. Now that I've settled in, said her mother, why should our apartment be idle? Sell it, John, and exchange yours for a 2- or 3-room apartment. A year later, the couple celebrated a housewarming party in a spacious one-bedroom apartment. The house was full of guests that day. Fiona and Adam and their daughters came to congratulate their relatives. Friends brought a lot of gifts. The holiday was a success. Savannah and her mother-in-law set a gorgeous table. Everyone was satisfied. In the evening, after seeing his friends off, John took his relatives to the country house. They expressed a desire to stay a few days with them. Savannah and her mother-in-law were clearing the table when she felt sick. John's terrified mother called an ambulance and called her son. By the time he returned, a doctor was already sitting beside Savannah. When she saw John, she said hello and with a smile, Congratulations, co-worker. You're going to be a daddy soon. And you, Mommy, need to take care of yourself. She turned to Savannah. In the coming months, you should not be overexcited or overstressed.